The silver cup struck the breakfast table with enough force to silence 20 people. Milk spilled across the white linen, ran between the untouched dishes, and dripped onto the polished floor of Blackthorn Hall. 7-year-old Oliver stared at the mess he had deliberately made. At the opposite end of the table, his father lowered the morning newspaper. Lucian Blackthorn, Duke of Ravensford, had returned from London 2 nights earlier. He had spoken to the steward, the footman, the stablemaster, and even the village magistrate. But he had not spoken to his wife. He had not addressed Lady Helena directly in 14 months. Not once. Now Oliver reached for a second cup. Oliver! The Duke's voice cracked through the room like a gunshot. The boy froze. The servants froze. Helena's fingers tightened around her spoon, but she did not look up. Lucian placed the newspaper beside his plate. That is enough. Oliver slowly lowered the cup. For several seconds, the child simply stared at his father. His expression was not frightened. It was confused. Then he whispered, "You can still speak." The Duke's face changed. Only slightly, but Helena saw it. Oliver pushed himself down from his chair. He walked past the servants and stopped beside his father. "Papa, were you punishing me?" Lucian frowned. "For what?" "For the window." "What window?" "The one I broke last spring." The Duke glanced toward Helena, but she remained motionless. "I was in London last spring," he said. "I did not know about any window." Oliver's brow furrowed. "Then why did you stop talking?" Lucian's jaw tightened. This was not a conversation meant for a breakfast room. It was not a conversation meant for a child. It was certainly not one he intended to have while half the household stood listening. "Return to your seat." Oliver did not move. He looked toward his mother. Helena's face had gone pale. "You always told me punishment must end when the person is sorry," Oliver said. "I have been sorry for months." Lucian's fingers closed around the edge of the table. "I was not punishing you." The boy appeared relieved for only a moment. Then he asked the question that split Blackthorn Hall open. "Then why did you punish Mama too?" Helena's spoon slipped from her hand. It struck the china plate with a delicate sound that somehow felt louder than the fallen cup. Lucian looked at his wife fully for the first time since returning home. She wore a grey morning dress with no jewellery except her wedding ring. Her hair was neatly arranged, her posture perfect, her expression composed. To anyone else, she looked like the dignified Duchess of Ravensford. But Lucian noticed what he had refused to notice before. She was thinner. There were shadows beneath her eyes. And when Oliver reached for her hand, she held onto him as though the child were the only solid thing left in the room. "Oliver," Helena said softly, "go with Nurse Calder." "But Mama!" "Now, please!" The boy's lower lip trembled. Nurse Calder stepped forward, but Oliver pulled away from her. He ran to Helena and wrapped his arms around her waist. Before leaving, he looked once more at his father. "Mama says you are not cruel," he said, "but cruel men never think they are cruel." No one breathed. Helena closed her eyes. Lucian's face hardened, not with anger at the child, but with the shock of hearing words no enemy had ever dared speak to him. Nurse Calder hurried Oliver from the room. The doors closed behind them. Lucian turned to the servants. "Leave us." Chairs scraped. Shoes moved quickly across the floor. Within seconds, the breakfast room stood empty, except for the Duke and Duchess. Helena began gathering the broken pieces of the cup. "Leave that." Her hand stopped. 14 months of silence stood between them. 14 months of messages, delivered through servants. 14 months of sitting at opposite ends of tables, attending the same ceremonies, sleeping in separate wings, and pretending their marriage had not become a public funeral. Lucian had imagined this moment many times. In those imaginings, Helena would break first. She would confess. She would beg him to listen. She would explain the letter he had found inside her writing desk, the letter that had destroyed every certainty he possessed. Instead, she merely placed one fragment of silver beside another. "Look at me," he said. Helena slowly raised her eyes. There was no triumph in them, no anger. That unsettled him more than either would have. "What has Oliver been told?" "The truth." Lucian rose. "The truth?" "That his father does not speak to his mother. You made him believe I was punishing him. I told him no such thing." "Then where did he get that idea?" "From being 7 years old and living in a house where every room changes when you enter it." Lucian stared at her. Helena continued quietly. He heard the servants whispering. He noticed that you replied when he spoke, but never when I did. He saw letters returned to me unopened. He watched me leave rooms so that you could enter them. That was your choice. No, Lucian, it was the only dignity you left me. Hearing his name from her lips struck him with unexpected force. He had forbidden no one from using it. Yet for 14 months she had addressed him only as Your Grace. Lucian moved closer. You could have ended this at any time. How? By telling me the truth. I told you the truth. You told me there were things I had no right to know. I told you the secret was not mine to reveal. The letter concerned my family. Yes, it mentioned a child. Helena's face became guarded. Yes. And you expected me to accept your silence. A bitter smile touched her mouth. That is almost amusing. What is? You demanded answers while refusing to hear a single word from me. You had your opportunity that night. I had less than 3 minutes before you passed judgment. I gave you a choice. No, you gave me an ultimatum. Lucian remembered the night clearly. Rain had battered the windows. The midsummer guests had already departed when he entered Helena's private sitting room and found a letter lying open beside the fire. The message was unsigned, but the handwriting belonged to a man. Lucian had read only 4 lines before the ground beneath his marriage disappeared. The child is becoming more difficult to hide. He has begun asking about his father. You promised Ravensford would never know. Send the money before the end of the month, or I will come to Blackthorn Hall myself. Helena had entered moments later. Lucian had held up the letter and asked one question. Who is the child? She had gone white. Not confused. Not shocked. Guilty. At least, that was what Lucian had believed. He demanded the man's name. She refused. He demanded to know whether the child was hers. She had said, I cannot answer that without betraying someone who once trusted me. To Lucian, the answer had been clear enough. He had spent the night walking through the darkened gallery, thinking of every journey Helena had taken without him, every charity visit, every afternoon she had claimed to spend in the village. By dawn, love had curdled into humiliation. He entered her chamber and told her he would not expose her. Oliver would never endure a public scandal. Helena would keep her title, her household, and every comfort expected of a duchess. But until she confessed, he would have nothing more to say to her. He called it restraint. He called it honor. He even convinced himself it was mercy. Now, standing across from Helena while milk dripped from the table and their son's accusation echoed through the house, Lucian was no longer certain what to call it. Did you tell Oliver about the letter? He asked. No. Does anyone else know? Your secretary knows enough. My secretary? Helena's expression sharpened. Mr. Hargrove has handled every letter I attempted to send you. Lucian frowned. You never sent me anything. I wrote to you 43 times. The number landed between them. Lucian almost laughed from disbelief. I received no letters. You received them. You simply chose not to open them. I saw nothing from you. Then perhaps your instructions were broader than you intended. He remembered the order he had given Mr. Hargrove the morning after finding the letter. No personal correspondence from the Duchess was to be placed before him unless it concerned Oliver, the estate, or an emergency. At the time, Lucian thought the instruction necessary. Helena had refused to speak when given the chance. He would not allow pages of carefully composed excuses to follow him to London. Where are these letters? He asked. Most were returned. And the others? Helena glanced toward the door. Oliver has them. Lucian's voice dropped. My son has been reading correspondence about our marriage. No, he found the box 2 weeks ago. The seals are unbroken. Why would you keep them where he could find them? I did not. They were locked inside my writing cabinet. Oliver opened a locked cabinet. He has your determination. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have. Lucian walked to the bell and pulled it. A footman appeared almost instantly. Bring Lord Oliver here. Helena stood. No. The footman looked between them. Lucian's eyes narrowed. No? Do not drag him back into this room and interrogate him because he finally spoke aloud what every person in this house already knows. The footman appeared desperate to disappear. Lucian dismissed him with a gesture. Once the door shut, he turned to Helena. You believe the household considers me cruel. I believe the household has learned to imitate you. What does that mean? It means the servants stopped answering questions that concerned you. The guests stopped inviting me to gatherings because they feared offending you. The tenants began addressing petitions to the steward rather than me. Even the women I once called friends learned to lower their voices when I entered a room. I ordered none of that. You did not need to. You are the Duke. The truth of it entered him slowly. Lucian had believed his silence existed only between husband and wife. A private wall, a consequence. But power did not remain private. When a duke refused to acknowledge his duchess, everyone beneath him understood the message. She was still titled, still wealthy, still obeyed, but she was no longer safe to stand beside. Lucian turned toward the tall windows. The winter gardens beyond them were covered in frost. Helena had designed those gardens during the first year of their marriage. He remembered her kneeling in the soil, with mud on her gloves, laughing as she ordered him to stop giving advice about roses. He remembered how often she used to laugh. He could not remember the last time he had heard it. "Where are the letters now?" he asked. Helena did not answer. He faced her. "Where are they?" Oliver hid them. Why? Because he heard Mr. Hargrove tell a footman they should be burned. Lucian went still. When? Yesterday morning. A different kind of silence filled the breakfast room. Mr. Hargrove had served as Lucian's private secretary for 11 years. He managed political correspondence, estate accounts, private appointments, and documents too sensitive for the steward's office. He had also been the man who brought Lucian the unsigned letter after claiming it had fallen from Helena's desk. "Did Hargrove know Oliver heard him?" Lucian asked. "I do not believe so. And you said nothing to me." Helena gave him a long, exhausted look. "How was I supposed to tell you?" Lucian had no reply. The door opened before either of them could speak again. Oliver entered alone. He carried a small wooden box against his chest. Nurse Calder hovered anxiously in the corridor, but the boy had clearly refused to let her accompany him inside. Oliver placed the box on the table. "I knew you would ask for it." Lucian examined the brass lock. It had been forced open. Inside lay dozens of envelopes, each bearing his name in Helena's handwriting. Some had been folded. Some were stained from having been carried through rain. Every seal remained intact. Lucian lifted the first letter. The date was 14 months earlier, the morning after he had condemned their marriage to silence. He broke the wax. Helena inhaled sharply. "My lord," the letter began, "you believe my refusal to betray another person is proof that I have betrayed you. It is not. I am asking you to wait 3 days. By then, the man responsible will have no choice but to tell you everything." Lucian looked up. "You asked me to wait?" "I did. I never saw this." "I know." He opened a second letter, written 4 days later. "The confession I was promised has not come. I now understand that he intends to let me carry his guilt. I will not expose him yet, because an innocent child would suffer, but I swear before God that I have never broken my marriage vows." Lucian's pulse began to pound. Who was supposed to confess? Helena's eyes moved toward Oliver. Not in front of him. Lucian opened another envelope. This one had been written 3 months after the first. "Oliver asked today why his father does not look at me. I told him you were burdened by affairs of state. I am no longer certain whether I lied to protect you or to protect myself." Lucian lowered the page. Oliver climbed onto the chair beside his mother. "There is one more," the boy said. He reached beneath the other letters and removed an envelope different from the rest. It was sealed with black wax. There was no name on the front. Helena lunged for it. "Oliver, give that to me!" The boy flinched. Lucian took the envelope first. Helena's composure finally shattered. "You cannot read that. It was hidden with letters addressed to me. It is not yours. Who wrote it?" She said nothing. Lucian turned the envelope over. Pressed into the black wax was the crest of his own family. Not the ducal crest Lucian used. A smaller crest. One that had belonged to his younger brother, Adrian. Adrian, who had drowned 6 years earlier. Lucian broke the seal. The letter contained only 2 sentences. "Helena, if Ravensford ever discovers what I have done, everything our father built will collapse. Keep the boy hidden, and I swear I will return before my brother learns the child is mine." Lucian read it again. Then a third time. The room seemed to tilt. "My brother wrote this." Helena looked defeated. "Yes. He died 6 years ago. Yes. The letter I found was written 14 months ago." Helena's eyes filled with something Lucian could not identify. Not guilt. Fear. The first letter was not from Adrian. Lucian moved closer. Then who sent it? Before Helena could answer, the breakfast room door opened once more. Mr. Hargrove stood on the threshold. His normally immaculate coat was unbuttoned. Mud stained his boots. There was a fresh cut across one cheek. He looked at the open box, then at the letter in Lucian's hand. All colour drained from his face. "Your Grace," Hargrove said, "you were not supposed to see that." Lucian folded the letter with deliberate care. "What have you done?" Hargrove glanced toward Oliver. His right hand moved slowly behind his coat. Helena saw it first. She pulled Oliver against her. Lucian. It was the way she said his name that made him turn. Not coldly, not formally, but as a warning. Hargrove drew a small pistol and aimed it directly at the child. Before we continue, subscribe to Nightfall Tales, because your support encourages us to keep creating quality stories filled with mystery, emotion, and unforgettable twists. The pistol looked too small to hold so much terror. Mr. Hargrove stood inside the breakfast room with one hand pressed against the door and the other aimed at Oliver. No servant entered behind him. No one shouted from the corridor. For one suspended moment, Blackthorn Hall seemed to hold its breath. Lucian did not move. Neither did Helena. Oliver's fingers twisted into the fabric of his mother's dress. "Lower the weapon," Lucian said. Hargrove gave a thin, humorless smile. "You still speak as though the world obeys you. It usually does. Not today." Lucian's gaze never left the pistol. Hargrove had served him for 11 years. He knew Lucian's schedules, his accounts, his political allies, and the position of every bell rope in the house. He also knew Lucian well enough to understand exactly which threat would make him hesitate. Not Helena. Not the servants. Not even Lucian himself. Oliver. "What do you want?" Helena asked. Hargrove looked at her. "The letter. It is already open." "Then I want the box." Lucian placed one hand over the stack of Helena's letters. "You burned enough of the truth already." Hargrove's eyes hardened. "I did what was necessary." "To protect whom?" "To protect what remains of this family." The words were so unexpected that Lucian almost laughed. "You aimed a pistol at my son to protect my family. I am aiming it at him because you leave me no choice. Every coward says that before doing something unforgivable." Hargrove's jaw tightened. The pistol shifted by less than an inch. Helena immediately drew Oliver closer. Lucian saw the fear in his wife's face. 14 months earlier, he had mistaken fear for guilt. He would not make the same error twice. "Look at me," Lucian said. Hargrove did. "You came through the Eastern Passage." The secretary's expression changed. Lucian continued. "There is mud on your right boot, but the front drive is frozen. You entered through the garden tunnel." Hargrove said nothing. "The tunnel door is alarmed," Lucian added. "The steward will know it has been opened." "You dismissed the servants?" "Yes, from this room." Lucian glanced toward the ceiling. "I did not dismiss the men standing in the gallery above us." Hargrove's eyes flicked upward. It lasted only a second. But 1 second was enough. Helena pulled Oliver beneath the table. Lucian seized the silver serving tray and hurled it across the room. The pistol fired. The shot shattered the tall mirror behind Lucian. Glass exploded over the carpet. Before Hargrove could aim again, Lucian crossed the space between them and struck his wrist against the door frame. The pistol fell. Hargrove drove his shoulder into Lucian's chest, and the two men crashed against the wall. Helena dragged Oliver toward the far side of the table. "Run to Nurse Calder," she ordered. "I will not leave you. Oliver, now." The boy hesitated. That hesitation nearly cost them everything. Hargrove tore free from Lucian and reached for the fallen pistol. Oliver saw it before anyone else. He kicked the weapon beneath the cabinet. Hargrove turned on him. Lucian struck the secretary across the jaw. The doors burst open. The steward entered with 4 footmen and 2 armed estate guards. Hargrove was forced to the floor. His arms were pulled behind him. Even then, he stared not at Lucian, but at Helena. "You should have burned the letter," he said. Helena stood with Oliver pressed to her side. "You should never have written the first one." Lucian looked from his wife to his secretary. "The letter I found came from him?" Helena nodded. Hargrove laughed, despite the guard's grip on his shoulders. "You still do not understand." Lucian stepped closer. Then explain it before I have you dragged to the magistrate in chains." "The magistrate?" Hargrove's smile widened. "Which one? Lord Fenwick, who owes me £3,000, or Sir Peter Calstow, whose son would hang if I opened the correct ledger?" Lucian's expression darkened. Hargrove had managed his confidential correspondence for more than a decade. How many secrets had passed through his hands? How many had he copied? How many men had he bought? "Search his rooms," Lucian ordered the steward. "Every drawer, every book, every floorboard." Hargrove stopped smiling. "Your Grace. Search his London residence as well. Send riders before noon. You do not know what you are disturbing." "No," Lucian said, "but I am finally beginning to suspect who has been disturbing it." The guards pulled Hargrove toward the door. The secretary resisted. "Ask your wife where the child is." Lucian's gaze snapped toward Helena. Hargrove twisted hard enough to face them. "Ask her why Adrian entrusted the boy to her. Ask her why she chose his reputation over yours." "Take him away," Helena said. "You protected a dead man," Hargrove shouted as the guards dragged him into the corridor. "And you destroyed a living one." The doors slammed shut. Silence returned. But it was no longer the silence Lucian had created. This silence was filled with shattered glass, smoke, and the terrible awareness that a child had nearly died because adults had guarded their secrets more carefully than they guarded him. Oliver began to shake. Helena knelt and held his face between her hands. "Look at me. You are safe. He tried to shoot me. He will never come near you again." "Why?" Helena did not answer. Oliver looked at his father. Lucian had faced armed men before. He had sat in war councils, ridden through riots, and watched political enemies threaten his title. But nothing had prepared him for his son's expression. The boy was waiting for another comforting lie. Lucian crossed the room and knelt beside him. "Because Hargrove was afraid," he said. "Of me?" "No, of the truth." "What truth?" Lucian looked at Helena. She closed her eyes. The moment had arrived. Not the one she wanted. Not the one she had prepared for. But secrets did not wait until families were ready. They simply grew until they became larger than the people protecting them. Helena took Oliver's hand. "Your Uncle Adrian had a son." Oliver frowned. "Uncle Adrian is dead." "Yes. Then where is his son?" Helena glanced toward Lucian. "In the North Tower." Lucian rose so quickly that the chair behind him overturned. "The North Tower?" Oliver looked between them. "The locked one?" Helena nodded. Lucian stared at his wife, as though she had spoken in a language he could not understand. The North Tower had been closed for years. Its upper rooms were rarely used, the lower passage connected to an abandoned chapel, and only the housekeeper and steward were supposed to possess keys. "You hid a child inside my home. I did not hide him there. Then who did? Your mother." Lucian went still. "My mother has been dead for 5 years. She brought him here before she died. Why was I never told? Because Adrian begged her not to tell you. And she obeyed him." At first, Lucian's anger returned with frightening speed. Not the cold anger of the past 14 months. This was sharper, more desperate. "My brother fathered a child. My mother concealed him. You knew. Hargrove knew. And everyone decided the Duke of Ravensford was the only man in England who did not deserve the truth. You were not the only one deceived. Do not compare your silence to mine. I am not. You should have told me." "I tried. In 43 letters. Yes. Why not before?" Helena's eyes flashed. "Because I made a promise to a dying woman. And what of your promise to me?" "That is precisely why I stopped protecting Adrian." Lucian stared at her. Helena moved toward the box and removed the second letter he had opened. The man who promised to confess was not Adrian. It was Hargrove. Oliver had gone quiet. He stood beside the table, listening with the grave attention of a child being forced to understand the failures of adults. Helena continued. "Adrian left debts, forged documents, and a child whose mother had no protection. Your mother discovered everything after his death. She paid the debts and brought the boy to Blackthorn Hall under another name." "What name?" Helena hesitated. "Samuel Reed." Lucian knew the name. A boy of 11 lived in the North Wing with Mrs. Bell, the widowed music tutor. He was said to be her sister's orphan. Lucian had seen him only a handful of times. A quiet child with dark hair who always lowered his head when the Duke passed. "My nephew has lived beneath my roof," Lucian said. And I never knew him. You were rarely here. The words were not cruel. That made them worse. Lucian turned away. He thought of the years spent in London. Parliamentary sessions, estate disputes, royal appointments, endless dinners where powerful men congratulated one another for abandoning their homes in the service of the nation. When he returned to Blackthorn Hall, he expected everything to remain as he had left it. The estate, the servants, his wife, his son. He had mistaken absence for authority. Why did Hargrove send the letter 14 months ago? He asked. Helena's voice lowered. Because Samuel had begun asking questions. About Adrian. About you. Lucian turned back. Why would he ask about me? Your mother gave him a miniature portrait. He recognized the family resemblance. Lucian's thoughts moved quickly. Hargrove wanted money. He wanted more than money. What? Samuel's existence threatens documents Hargrove has spent years using. Which documents? The papers Adrian forged before his death. Lucian remembered his brother differently from how others did. To the world, Adrian Blackthorn had been charming, reckless, and adored. He could turn a creditor into a drinking companion and an insult into a joke. Lucian had always been the responsible brother, the heir, the one expected to repair whatever Adrian broke. But forgery? Blackmail? A hidden child? What did Adrian forge? Helena looked at Oliver again. Lucian understood. Oliver, go to Nurse Calder. The boy folded his arms. No, this is not for you. It became for me when Mr. Hargrove pointed a gun at me. Lucian had no answer to that. Oliver stepped closer to his mother. You keep saying children must be protected from the truth, but the secrets are what keep hurting us. Helena's eyes filled with tears. Lucian felt something inside him shift. The child had expressed in one sentence what every adult in the room had failed to understand. Lucian pulled out a chair. Sit beside me. Oliver obeyed. It was the first time father and son had sat next to each other at that table in months. Helena remained standing. Adrian forged a second marriage record, she said. Lucian's face changed. What? He had privately married Samuel's mother. That would make the boy legitimate. Yes. And if the marriage record is valid, Samuel may have a claim upon part of the Blackthorn inheritance. Lucian looked toward Oliver. His son was the acknowledged heir to Ravensford. A legitimate son of Adrian, born before Oliver, could challenge that position if the settlement documents were interpreted in his favour. Oliver understood enough. Would he take my home? No, Helena said quickly. But Lucian heard uncertainty beneath her reassurance. Hargrove discovered the marriage record, she continued. He used it to control your mother. After she died, he used it to control me. How? He claimed he possessed proof that Adrian's marriage was valid. He also claimed he could make that proof disappear permanently, in exchange for money. At first. And later? Helena's expression became distant. He wanted influence, appointments, access to your seal. He wanted me to persuade you to support men you distrusted. Lucian's voice grew cold. Did you? Never. Then how did you keep him silent? I sold my jewelry. Lucian looked at her bare throat. The emerald necklace his mother had given Helena was gone. So were the Blackthorn diamonds, the sapphire comb, and the ruby bracelet Helena once wore to every winter ball. Lucian had assumed she stopped wearing them because their marriage had collapsed. He never asked. How much? He said. Nearly £12,000. Oliver's eyes widened, despite not understanding the sum. Lucian did. It was enough to purchase an estate. You paid Hargrove £12,000? Over 3 years. Why did you not come to me? Because the first payment was made before your mother died. She made me swear that Samuel would never be used against Oliver. You chose my mother's fear over my right to know. I chose 2 children who had done nothing wrong. Lucian stepped toward her, and when Hargrove wrote the letter I found, I refused to pay more. So he made it appear you had a hidden child. Yes. And you still would not tell me. I told Hargrove he had 3 days to confess everything to you. Why would he agree? Because I had found proof of his theft from the estate. Lucian's eyes narrowed. What proof? A ledger. Where is it? Helena looked toward the fireplace. I placed it in the one room Hargrove could not enter without attracting attention. Lucian followed her gaze. The chapel? She nodded. Inside Adrian's tomb. Oliver whispered, Uncle Adrian is buried there. Yes, Helena said. But if Hargrove knows about the ledger, Lucian replied, he will have men searching for it. He did not know where I hid it. A sudden pounding sounded from the corridor. The steward entered without waiting to be admitted. Your Grace, there is a fire. Lucian turned toward the window. Smoke rose beyond the gardens, not from the stables, not from the servants' quarters, from the abandoned chapel. Helena ran. Lucian caught her arm before she reached the door. You are not going near it. The ledger is inside. Then let it burn. It contains every payment, every forged signature, every name Hargrove used. I will not lose you for a book. Helena stared at him. The words seemed to strike them both. For 14 months, Lucian had behaved as though losing her were the punishment she deserved. Now the thought of actual loss filled him with terror. Stay with Oliver, he ordered. Then he ran. The chapel doors were already burning when Lucian reached the courtyard. Servants formed a line from the well, passing buckets from hand to hand. Flames climbed the old wooden frame, swallowing the ivy and sending sparks into the winter air. Lucian seized a wet blanket. The steward blocked him. The roof may collapse. The ledger is inside Adrian's tomb. Then it is already lost. Lucian shoved past him. He entered through the side door. Heat rolled through the chapel. Smoke obscured the altar, but Lucian knew the way. Adrian's stone tomb stood in the eastern alcove, beneath a carved angel. Lucian reached it and dropped to his knees. There was no handle, no visible compartment. Then he saw a small metal clasp beneath the carved inscription. Adrian Blackthorne, beloved son, beloved brother. Lucian pulled it. A narrow panel opened in the stone. Inside lay a black ledger wrapped in oilcloth, and beside it rested a sealed document bearing the royal stamp. Lucian took both. A beam crashed behind him. Fire blocked the side door. He turned toward the main aisle. Through the smoke, someone stood near the altar. At first, Lucian assumed it was a servant. Then the figure stepped forward. A boy, 11 years old. Terrified. Samuel Reed. He held a small portrait in one hand. Your Grace, he said, coughing. Mr. Hargrove told me my father was waiting here. Lucian crossed the burning chapel and pulled the boy beneath the wet blanket. Your father is dead. Samuel stared at him. I know. Then why did you come? The boy's eyes filled with tears. Because he said my uncle wanted me dead. The roof groaned above them. Lucian pushed the boy toward the remaining doorway. They emerged seconds before part of the chapel roof collapsed. Helena and Oliver were waiting in the courtyard. Samuel stopped when he saw them. Oliver looked at the older boy. Neither child spoke. They were cousins, perhaps rivals, perhaps brothers, in every way that mattered. Or perhaps two innocent boys about to inherit a war created before either of them was born. Lucian handed the ledger to the steward. Then he looked at the sealed royal document. The stamp was genuine. He broke it open. Helena stepped closer. What is it? Lucian read the first lines. The blood drained from his face. It was not a marriage record. It was a revised inheritance settlement, signed by Lucian's father shortly before his death. The document named Adrian's legitimate firstborn son as the future heir to Ravensford. Not Oliver. Samuel. Lucian slowly raised his eyes. Samuel stood beside Helena, smoke staining his coat. Oliver stood beside Lucian. Two boys, one title, one inheritance. And a truth that could not protect both of them. Before we continue, here is the question. Should Lucian honor the hidden inheritance document and risk taking Oliver's future away, or should he destroy it because Samuel's claim was built on years of secrecy and manipulation? Tell us what you believe Lucian should do, and comment your answer below. The document trembled in Lucian's hand. Not because of the cold, not because smoke still burned his lungs, but because one sheet of paper had just placed two children on opposite sides of a war neither of them had begun. The courtyard of Blackthorne Hall remained crowded, with servants fighting the last of the chapel fire. Water struck burning timber. Smoke rolled across the frozen gardens. Somewhere behind them, a section of roof collapsed with a thunderous crack. Yet Lucian heard only one sentence. Adrian's legitimate firstborn son shall inherit the dukedom and all lands attached to Ravensford. Samuel. Not Oliver. Samuel stood several feet away, clutching the miniature portrait he had carried into the burning chapel. Oliver remained beside Helena. The younger boy looked at the document in his father's hand, then at Samuel. "Is he going to take my room?" Oliver asked. The innocence of the question cut through every adult fear surrounding them. Helena knelt beside him. "No one is taking your room." "But Papa said it was about the inheritance." Lucien looked at his son. He had spent years believing children should be protected from difficult truths. Now he understood that uncertainty could frighten them more than truth ever could. He folded the document. "This paper says Samuel may have a right to become Duke of Ravensford one day." Oliver's face tightened. "Instead of me?" "Possibly." Samuel immediately stepped backwards. "I do not want it." Every eye turned toward him. The boy's coat was stained with soot. His hair was damp from the water servants had thrown over him after he escaped the chapel. His hands shook, but his voice did not. "I do not want his house." "It is not merely a house," the steward said before catching Lucien's warning look. Samuel stared at Oliver. "I never asked to be a duke." Oliver looked uncertain. "You asked about Papa?" "Because he was my uncle. You said Mr. Hargrove told you Papa wanted you dead." Samuel lowered his eyes. "He said your father hated mine." Lucien felt the accusation deeply because part of it was true. He had loved Adrian. He had envied Adrian. He had protected Adrian. And at times, he had hated him. Adrian entered every room as though the world had been waiting for him. He made people laugh when Lucien made them obey. Their father forgave Adrian's debts while praising Lucien's discipline, as though discipline required no love. But Lucien had never hated his brother enough to harm his child. "Samuel," he said, "I did not know you existed." The boy looked up. "Hargrove said you knew. He lied. He said you sent my mother away. I did not know your mother. He said you burned their marriage record. I did not." Samuel's expression hardened. Children did not always become emotional when betrayed. Sometimes they became still. That stillness was more frightening. "Then everyone lies," he said. Helena stepped toward him. "Not everyone. You told me my father was Mr. Reed. I told you Mrs. Bell's family name was Reed because that was the name chosen to protect you. You said my parents died in an accident. Your mother did. And my father?" Helena hesitated. Samuel saw the answer before she gave it. "He knew about me. Yes, he left me. He was afraid. So he left me." No explanation could soften the truth. Adrian had known. Adrian had chosen secrecy. Adrian had promised to return, then drowned before he fulfilled that promise. Whatever his reasons, a child had grown up wondering why he was unwanted. Lucien recognized the wound because he had just placed a similar one inside Oliver. Not through abandonment, through silence. "Hargrove will answer for what he has done," Lucien said. Samuel's gaze moved to the burning chapel. "He said you would say that." The words made Lucien pause. "What else did he tell you?" "That if the ledger was found, you would blame me. The ledger proves his crimes." Samuel shook his head. "No, he said it proves yours." Helena's face changed. Lucien turned to the steward, who still held the black ledger. "Open it." The steward removed the oilcloth and turned the cover. The first pages contained columns of payments, names, dates, amounts. Helena's jewels were listed one by one. But beside each payment was not Hargrove's signature. It was Lucien's. Or a convincing imitation of it. The steward looked up. "Your Grace." "Keep reading." The entries became worse. Payments to magistrates. Land transfers. Money sent to Samuel's mother before her death. Instructions to conceal Adrian's marriage. Every transaction appeared to have been authorized by Lucien. A perfect record of corruption. A perfect weapon. If the ledger reached Parliament, Lucien would not merely lose his title. He could be charged with fraud, coercion, and conspiracy to deprive a legitimate heir of his inheritance. Helena whispered, "He forged your approval." Lucien looked toward the house. Hargrove was not trying only to destroy evidence. He had been building a replacement truth, one in which the Duke had known everything, one in which Helena had helped him, one in which Samuel had been deliberately hidden to protect Oliver. The real story was complicated. The false one was simple, and simple lies were often believed first. "Where is Hargrove?" Lucien asked. The steward's face went pale. In the west cellar under guard. Go. They ran. Lucian entered the house with Helena, Oliver, Samuel, and the steward close behind. Servants stepped aside as they crossed the great hall. The west cellar door stood open. One guard lay unconscious against the wall. The other was gone. Hargrove's chair was empty. A length of cut rope rested on the floor. Lucian touched the unconscious guard's neck. He is alive. The steward examined the open passage at the end of the cellar. The old wine tunnel. Lucian knew where it led. The Western Road. And beyond the Western Road, the railway station. If Hargrove reached London with copies of the forged ledger, he could place them before Lucian's political enemies within hours. He planned this escape, Helena said. Lucian rose. He planned everything. A bell rang above them. Once. Then twice. The estate alarm. A footman appeared at the cellar entrance. Your Grace, a carriage has been taken from the south stable. Lucian headed for the stairs. Helena caught his sleeve. You cannot follow him alone. I am not losing him. You nearly died in the chapel, and Oliver nearly died at breakfast. That is why you must think before acting. Lucian turned on her. For 14 months, I thought instead of listening, I considered instead of trusting, I judged instead of asking. I will not remain in this house while the man responsible escapes. Helena held his gaze. Then I am coming with you. No. You still believe commands can repair everything. This is not punishment. It sounds exactly like it. The words stopped him. She moved closer. Hargrove controlled me because I was isolated. He controlled Samuel because the boy did not know whom to trust. He controlled you because he knew you would choose pride over conversation. Lucian's face tightened. Helena continued. He has survived by separating us. Do not help him again. Oliver appeared at the top of the stairs. Then we all go. No, Lucian and Helena said together. For the first time in many months, they sounded like husband and wife. Oliver folded his arms. Samuel knows what Hargrove told him. Mama knows the ledger. You know the roads. I know where Samuel hid. Samuel looked at him. What? Last week, I saw you go into the old boathouse. Samuel's eyes widened. Oliver pointed toward the western windows. Mr. Hargrove may think Samuel is still there. Samuel looked terrified. He gave me a bag. What was inside? Lucian asked. Letters. He said I must take them to London if anything happened to him. Where is the bag? In the boathouse. Lucian understood. Hargrove had not escaped toward the railway. He was going to retrieve the letters first. The carriage was a distraction. The lake road, Lucian said. They reached the boathouse before Hargrove. Lucian ordered the servants to remain hidden among the trees. Helena took the children behind a stone wall near the frozen lake. Inside the boathouse, Samuel removed a loose plank beneath an overturned rowing boat. A leather bag lay underneath. Lucian opened it. The letters were not originals. They were copies. Dozens of them. Forged instructions in Lucian's name. Some ordered Hargrove to bribe officials. Others ordered Helena to keep Samuel hidden. One suggested Samuel's mother had been deliberately denied medical care. At the bottom of the bag rested a prepared statement carrying Samuel's name. The boy could barely read the formal language, but Lucian understood it instantly. It was a sworn accusation. It claimed Lucian had threatened Samuel's life. Hargrove wanted him to sign this, Helena said. He already did. Samuel pointed to the bottom of the page. A shaky signature appeared beneath the statement. I thought it was permission to travel. Lucian closed his eyes. A frightened child, a forged ledger, a legitimate inheritance document. Hargrove had everything necessary to destroy the Blackthorne family. Footsteps sounded outside. Lucian extinguished the lantern. The boathouse door opened. Hargrove entered carrying another pistol. The missing guard followed him. So did Lord Fenwick, the magistrate Hargrove had mentioned earlier. Lucian remained hidden behind the rowing boat. Fenwick looked around the dark interior. Where is the bag? Beneath the floor, Hargrove said. And the boy? Not important now. You said he would testify. He has already signed. Fenwick's voice lowered. You assured me the Duke would be blamed for the chapel fire. He will. And the Duchess? She will be accused of helping him conceal the child. Lucian's hand tightened. Fenwick continued. What of Oliver? Hargrove did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was cold. An heir cannot inherit if he does not survive. Lucian stepped from the shadows. Then it is fortunate my son is nowhere near you. Hargrove spun. Lucian struck the pistol from his hand before he could fire. Fenwick rushed toward the door, but the steward and estate guards entered from outside. The corrupt magistrate was seized. The missing guard surrendered immediately. Hargrove did not. He pulled a knife from his coat and charged Lucian. They crashed into the side of the rowing boat. Wood splintered. Lucian caught Hargrove's wrist, but the secretary drove him backwards toward the open lake entrance. The doors behind them overlooked a narrow platform above the frozen water. Hargrove slashed wildly. "You should have remained silent," he hissed. Lucian blocked the blade with his forearm and allowed you to write the ending. You wrote it yourself. Every day you refused to speak to her. The truth of the accusation gave Hargrove confidence. He pressed forward. You made her look guilty. You made the household fear her. You made your son believe love could disappear without explanation. Lucian's heel reached the edge of the platform. Hargrove smiled. I only used the weapon you handed me. Then Helena's voice came from the doorway. He is right. Lucian and Hargrove both looked at her. Helena stood beside the guards. But a weapon can be put down. She threw the leather bag onto the floor. Hargrove's attention broke. Lucian twisted his wrist. The knife fell. Hargrove stumbled onto the frozen lake. The ice cracked beneath one foot. He stopped, terrified. Lucian could have stepped back. He could have watched the man fall. After the threats, the blackmail, the pistol aimed at Oliver, and the attempt to destroy Samuel, no one would have blamed him. Hargrove looked at him. For the first time, the secretary's confidence disappeared. Help me. Lucian stared at the cracking ice. Then he lay flat on the platform and extended his hand. Hargrove looked stunned. Take it. You would save me? I will not let my son learn justice from watching me choose revenge. Hargrove reached. Lucian pulled him toward the platform as the ice broke behind him. The guards dragged Hargrove to safety and placed him in chains. He looked back at Lucian. Mercy will not save your title. Lucian stood. No, but perhaps truth will save my family. By sunset, the great drawing room of Blackthorn Hall had become a courtroom of its own. The steward placed the ledger, forged letters, inheritance settlement, and Samuel's false statement on the central table. Lord Fenwick confessed before midnight. He admitted Hargrove had paid him to validate forged records and silence questions about Adrian's marriage. The missing guard admitted setting the chapel fire. Hargrove said nothing. He no longer needed to. The evidence spoke loudly enough. But one question remained. Was Samuel the rightful heir? The family solicitor arrived the following morning. He studied the settlement for hours. When he finally looked up, both boys were present. Lucian had insisted upon it. No more decisions made around children as though they are furniture, he said. The solicitor removed his spectacles. The document is genuine, however, it depends entirely upon the legality of Lord Adrian's marriage. And was the marriage legal? Helena asked. The record Hargrove possessed was forged. Samuel's face fell. The solicitor continued. But another record was found in the parish archives this morning. Lucian leaned forward. Another? Adrian did marry Samuel's mother. The ceremony was legal. Oliver gripped the arms of his chair. The solicitor turned another page. However, the inheritance settlement was signed 6 months before the marriage. Lucian frowned. Then my father did not know Samuel would be legitimate. More importantly, the settlement was never witnessed by the required second trustee. It has no legal force. Silence filled the room. Oliver exhaled. Samuel looked down. He had claimed not to want the title. Yet being denied something could still feel like rejection. Lucian understood that. He crossed the room and knelt before his nephew. The document cannot make you Duke of Ravensford. Samuel nodded stiffly. But your father was Adrian Blackthorn. Your mother was his lawful wife. That makes you a member of this family. Samuel looked at him. What does that mean? It means you will no longer live under a false name unless you choose to. Will I have to leave? No. Will Oliver hate me? Oliver answered before Lucian could. I have not decided. Helena covered a surprised laugh. It was small. Brief. But it was the first real laugh Lucian had heard from her in more than a year. Oliver looked at Samuel. You frightened everyone. I did not start the fire. You hid letters. You broke into your mother's cabinet. Oliver considered this. That is different. It is exactly the same. The boys stared at each other. Then Oliver smiled. Only slightly. Only slightly. I suppose you may keep your room. Samuel smiled back. Lucian stood and faced Helena. The others gradually left the drawing room. The solicitor gathered his papers. The steward took the evidence. The children followed Nurse Calder to the schoolroom, already arguing over who had behaved more bravely during the fire. Soon, Lucian and Helena were alone, just as they had been in the breakfast room. But nothing was the same. Lucian crossed to the table and placed her 43 letters between them. I have read 12. Helena's expression became guarded. You need not read the others. I do. Why? Because you wrote them when I refused to listen. She looked away. Lucian continued. I thought silence would force the truth from you. Instead, it gave lies space to grow. Helena said nothing. I believed I was punishing you. You were. I punished Oliver too. Yes. And I gave Hargrove the isolation he needed to control this house. Yes. Each answer struck him. He accepted every one. I cannot undo 14 months. No. I cannot ask you to forget them. No. But I can answer every letter. Helena looked at him. I do not want apologies written in an empty room. Then I will say them. He stepped closer. I was proud. I was cruel. I made my love feel conditional, and I called it honor. I let my title speak more loudly than my marriage. I believed that providing you with a home meant I could withdraw myself from it. Helena's eyes shone, but she did not rescue him from the confession. I am sorry, he said. Not because Hargrove deceived me, because I chose the version of events that justified hurting you. A tear slipped down her cheek. Lucian did not touch her, not until she chose to close the distance. Helena placed her hand over the letters. I do not know whether love can return simply because the truth has. Neither do I. What happens if I cannot forgive you? Then I will still become a better father. And if I can, then I will spend the rest of my life proving silence will never again be used as a punishment in this house. The door opened. Oliver entered without knocking. Samuel stood behind him. We have a question, Oliver announced. Lucian almost smiled. What is it? Are Mama and you still angry? Lucian looked at Helena. We are speaking. Oliver nodded seriously. That is better. Samuel glanced toward the breakfast room. Will we all eat together tomorrow? Helena looked at Lucian. Yes, she said. The following morning, 4 places were set near one another, instead of at opposite ends of the table. Oliver talked too loudly. Samuel asked too many questions. Helena corrected both boys while trying not to smile. Lucian listened. Not as a duke waiting for silence, not as a judge waiting for confession, but as a husband and father learning that a family did not survive because one man commanded it. It survived because each person was heard. Halfway through breakfast, Oliver reached for the silver cup he had thrown the day before. He looked at his father. Papa? Yes? Are you punishing anyone today? Lucian glanced at Helena. Her hand rested beside his on the table. No, he said. Today, I am listening. And for the first time in 14 months, Blackthorn Hall was no longer silent.